Jason Grenauer, thanks so much for watching Denver 7 News on Local 3. We are standing by awaiting the start of a live news conference out at Dove Valley, the Broncos pre-draft news conference with brand new general manager George Paton just a week ahead of this coming round 1 of the NFL draft where the Broncos pick 9th. Let's listen in live to the Broncos GM.
So I've been impressed with the whole building and the work they put in, and we're excited for the draft. Where we're picking at number 9, I really like it. I think we filled enough needs in free agency where we don't have to reach, for a player. We can take the best player, within reason. We have the flexibility to move up. We can move back. We have 9 picks. We have 3 picks in the first 75. So we're really excited. If we stand pat, we think we'll get an impact player at number 9. So we're looking forward to it. We feel we're in prime position to upgrade our football team. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Hey, George, Ryan O'Haller in Denver Post. One position you haven't addressed this offseason is quarterback. As you've dug into Drew Lock's first 2 years, do you feel like if you go forward with him in week 1, he can help you win games?
Yeah, I don't know about week 1. We're really high on Drew. I like seeing Drew here every morning when I come in. He's working hard. He's trending in the right direction. As you know, he has a lot of talent. I think he's becoming a better pro. But we're going to still look at the quarterback position. I've said since I got here we want to bring in competition, and that's the goal, and we plan on doing that.
As a follow-up on the quarterbacks in the draft, what are the strengths of Trey Lance and Justin Fields?
Yeah, I mean, they're different. Both, elite athletes, both really strong arms, both really talented, smart. They have all the intangibles you want in quarterbacks and in football players. They're raw a little bit, but really high ceilings for both players.
Thanks.
George, Jeff Legwold, I had a couple. The first one being, as tradition, would you just care to say who the number 9 player on your board is right now?
Patrick Smythe.
All right. I hear he's stubborn and doesn't take coaching, but okay.
He is very stubborn, yes. He likes a lot of press conferences.
It was a procedural thing. How did you handle sort of the grading? I mean, you came to a staff that was largely people that didn't come with you. So did you use the system they've used here, or did you? That's
a really good question. We kept the grading scale that they had here. I didn't want to change 30 people. I thought it's easier for me to change. Now, we've made a lot of adjustments within that scale and the way we run our meetings and some of the philosophies, but we did keep the grading scale intact. And again, I just didn't want 30, people changing with the coaches and the college scouts and the pro scouts. It just made sense for me to keep that the same, and so we could kind of go, it'd be a little more streamlined. But we did make a number of changes in the meetings and the structure. And then
last thing is, in your time in Minnesota, you guys never traded up in the first round. Do I have that correct?
We traded up in the first round twice from the second round, I believe. Maybe 3 times. We traded up for Harrison Smith. We traded up for Teddy.
But you never traded up from your first round pick. So.
Probably. You're right. Probably right. And
when would it make sense for you to do that in a general sense?
If we feel a player is good enough to go up and get, and there may be players in this draft that are worthy of that.
George, Troy Rank from Denver 7. Have you made calls yet to move up? And because it's your first year as the GM, how much does that draft capital weigh into, even if you do love a player that you have to weigh, is it worth, a couple of ones when we look at what San Francisco paid to move up?
Yeah, we haven't made any calls yet to move up. We received calls to move back. And it really doesn't, being a first-year general manager doesn't impact whether we would move up or not. If we feel a player could help us, could upgrade us, and we feel he's worth going to get, we're going to go get.
And a follow-up on that, do you feel like you can be patient and make that move on draft day, or based because you're on the phone all the time, do you think this was something that would have to happen before the draft? I guess I'm asking, can you be nimble and patient at the same time?
I think you have to be. I think this is a draft day trade because you don't know if that player is going to be there. And so typically these happen when you're on the clock, when they're on the clock. And so, obviously we had a few trades early, but they knew they were going to get one of their players. If we were to move up, we're not sure the player we're moving up for would be there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
George, Eric Delisle, DenverBroncos.com. A couple for you. What's the challenge in evaluating college tape for these quarterbacks versus what you've seen at the pro level from Drew and trying to compare apples to oranges there?
Yeah, I mean, the difference with college is you're projecting. You know, you're projecting how a 20-year-old, 21-year-old individual, you know, how he's going to react in a different environment, you know, with 25, 30, 35-year-old players. How is he going to react to the coaching, a different city, being on his own? So there's it's a big difference between pro scouting and college scouting, where college scouting you have to project, and there's a lot of work into that. You know, you got to dig deep into each player, whether it's his mental, whether it's his character, you know, psychological testing, the analytics. A lot of things go involved when trying to project a player, and there's no exact way of doing that.
And then what sort of role has John Elway played during this process, and how have you been able to lean on him?
Yeah, John's played a great role. He's been a great resource for me. You know, I have him watching certain positions. He's been in this role, I haven't, so what a sounding board for me to have John right next door. And so it's been amazing to have him.
Hey, George Stoya with the Gazette. Kind of going off that question, I actually spoke to Bill Reese earlier this week, who I know you're familiar with from your time in Chicago. You've spent time with guys like John Elway now, yeah. Bill Reese, Rick, Chris Greer in Miami. What have you maybe learned from those guys, and have they offered maybe any words of wisdom leading up to this next week?
You know, I haven't spoken with all of them. I spoke to Chris yesterday. He wasn't giving me words of wisdom. You know, we're kind of competing, but you take something from everyone you've been around, and they all have certain strengths. And you know, I don't want to go through each guy, but you do. I mean, from Mark Hatley, my first job in Chicago, you know, just the rare instincts and the way he treated people. Bill Reese, you know, I've been around a guy who just knowing how to recruit, knowing players, evaluating players, and just the collaboration, just the human being, the detail. I mean, I can go through each one, but it's you take a little bit of everyone and you try to use it, you know, and at the same time being genuine, being yourself.
Secondly, it looks like there might be a historic run on quarterbacks in the first, you know, top 10 picks. Why do you think that is, just from an outside perspective, maybe not even just as a GM, but why do you think there's such a run, and is that maybe playing into maybe an impatience to give guys more time? And do you think maybe Drew Lock falls into that category, who maybe hasn't had enough time?
Yeah, I mean, it's the toughest position to play in sports, the most important position to play in probably all sports. You know, I'm generalizing, but you need a good quarterback to win and sustain each year in, year out. You know, you need a good one. Do you need a franchise? You need a top 5? No, you can still win without one, but it's such important to a team's success to have a good quarterback, and that's why you might see 5 go in the top 10.
Hey, George, Arnie Stapleton. We've talked before about the challenges of this season during the pandemic, or this off season rather, with the no combine and whatnot. And I'm wondering, what are the practical implications, do you think, on draft day? Is your draft board shorter than it might have been otherwise? And on those day 3 picks, would you be inclined to try to trade them out for picks that might be more valuable in 2022?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We've kind of gone with business as usual. You know, last year we got a little taste of what it was like to have an unconventional draft without the pro days and without the top 30 visits. So I think it was, you know, we were pretty flexible. Everyone's kind of used to the Zooms, the Zoom meetings. And the one thing different this year, we had the pro days, so we were aggressive going to as many pro days as we could. But we probably had over 250 Zoom calls with players. And unlike at the combine, you know, you get an hour with these players, so you actually probably know these players more. And so, you know, I look at it as a benefit, and I know our scouts do as well.
Hey, George, Nick Cosmetter with The Athletic. You said it during your introductory press conference that you viewed the kind of the offensive and defensive lines as sort of the core of the team, and specifically to the offensive line. What's just been your evaluation now as you've had a couple months to look at that group? And secondly, what do you see as sort of a, you know, I guess the possibility of how much of a possibility is there to improve that group this next week? Yeah,
I mean, I like our offensive line. You know, I think we probably need a little more depth. I like the draft. I like the draft at guard and tackle. I think you'll be able to get a good offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds, maybe even 4 through 6. But, you know, I think our offensive line is, you know, if you had to rank them in the league, they're in the top 3rd. We just need to add depth. We need to add competition, and I think we'll do that.
Hey, George, Brandon Cristal from KOA. I've got two for you. The first is related to the building and protocols. Yesterday, you guys had the vaccination event. How are things, conversations with the players and the PA, and where do things stand now as far as the rest of the offseason?
You know, I haven't been on many of those calls. I've been locked in a draft meeting. You know, haven't seen the sunlight. But, you know, that's a league issue, you know, a league and a union issue, and I'm sure they're talking through it. As far as the protocol, I mean, I've been here, I don't know, 4.5 months, and I've never felt safer. You know, we get tested, you know, we have social distancing, contact tracers, and I can't imagine there's another building in the Denver area that's more safe than this building.
And then you kind of alluded to being a first-year GM and having taken all these experiences. I imagine being locked in a draft room, you're not paying attention to what people are saying on the outside or Twitter, but you talk to people around the league. Do you take any amusement when people are predicting, oh, that you're definitely moving up or that you're sticking at 9 and grabbing this guy? When you catch wind of what's being said, of what you're going to do, does that amuse you?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. You know, I don't read it all. You know, we do read a lot of the mocks, and it's interesting, and we do go through those. We're going to have a lot of mock drafts as we get closer. So we do read some of that stuff. I think it's important. And but yeah, you get a little amusement, I guess.
Hey George, Zach Stevens with DNVR. Thanks for talking with us today.
Yeah.
How would you evaluate the quarterback class this year, specifically the first round guys?
Yeah, I think it's very strong. I mean, I think they all have. It just kind of depends what flavor you want. But I do think it's a strong class. You know, there could be 5 or maybe 6 drafted in the first round. So that's always really strong. But it's a really good class.
Hey, George. Mark Kisla, Denver Post. Thanks for being here with us today, and that is my question. One thing I have learned in the last 14 months is that Zoom is a 4-letter word to me, and in evaluating players, has there been any advantages? Is it a big disadvantage to do these Zoom interviews rather than get your hands on them more? And specifically with quarterbacks, where that leadership and the intangible stuff we all talk about can be so important.
Yeah, you're right. It's really important to see these guys in person. That's why the pro days were really important for us. Now, we weren't allowed to meet with them in person and get them on the board, so you miss a little bit of that. But when you can get an hour with them on a Zoom, you'd be amazed. You can get them on the board. You can send them materials beforehand and have them study it and then take them through it. So there's a lot of things. Coaches are creative, scouts are creative, and I just think you just need to keep trying to figure out different ways to get to know these players. But the Zooms actually have been beneficial. You can have more of them. You know, when you're at the combine, you get 15 minutes to try to figure a guy out, and that's impossible. And so, like I said, we've had a number of Zoom calls, and it's been very beneficial. We you know, the whole staff, the college staff is, like I said, we've hit most of the pro days as well. So you get a different feel there, just watching a guy live. You know, how he competes. You know, at any position. You know, is he going to run the 40? Is he going to go through all the testing, or is he going to back out on that? You know, if he opted out, what type of shape is he in? You know, that's huge. So there's a lot of things. I mean, we're so used to adapting and being flexible. It really hasn't been that big a deal. You know, it really hasn't.
And I get from what you're saying, you actually think it's, in some ways, it's been an advantage to you.
I do. I think it's an advantage to spend more time with the kid. You know, whether it's Zoom, whether it's on the phone, whatever. But Zoom obviously is the #1 way you can get. Can the guy learn it? You know, what kind of person is he? You know, what's his demeanor? What does he do in his free time? What are his hobbies? So you can really get into that. You have more time. You know, when you have 15 minutes, it's like speed dating. You know, and I've never done that. Patrick, you probably have, but I have. But anyway.
Thanks, George. You know, you've had a strong offseason, getting a couple of corners. You keep Vaughn, you get long-term deals done with Justin and Shelby. And the #1 question that I would get on Twitter or Facebook is, what are they doing at quarterback?
Yeah.
I mean, so what would you tell Broncos country about that as this offseason has played out and you've filled so many, addressed so many needs, and then nothing has happened yet at quarterback?
Yeah, I understand it. I mean, it's we do like Drew Lock. So what we don't want to do is force it and bring a guy in, overpay a guy to come in, and he's not, you know, maybe he's not as good as the guy we have, you know. and maybe he's not good enough to compete. We want to get the right guy, and we still have time. There's a trade market. You have the draft. The landscape may change after the draft. A team drafts one, maybe that quarterback's on the market. So, we're going to be patient, not force it, but we do realize we want competition. And I've said that since I've gotten here, and that hasn't changed.
Follow up, Jawan James, have you been able to talk to him, and what is the expectation now for Jawan? Have you been able to kind of get eyes on him and see what?
Yeah, but he's been here. He's been working out. He looks great. And the expectation is he starts at right tackle and plays well.
Thank you.
George, a couple of questions about guys from the 2018 draft. Have you made a decision on Bradley Chubb's fifth-year option, and then Cortland Sutton is eligible for an extension now? Anything happening there? What's kind of your philosophy on guys going into that fourth season in terms of extensions?
Yeah, two of our core guys, and we want them here a long time, but we're not going to address that until after the draft. We're strictly focused on the draft, but those are two of our guys.
Hey, George, the players who opted out of this past college season, you probably don't take it as a one size fits all, but do you have to do a little more digging as to why they opted out and whether they fit what you guys want to do here?
Yeah, you want to know why, okay, and what they've been doing, since they opted out. And it's telling when you go to a pro day and a guy who's opted out is out of shape. That's telling. You've had all this time to work out and train, and you show up and the other guys are in better shape than you. But we evaluate them like everyone else. We're going to watch the tape the last time they played, and that's the evaluation. Then we'll get into the character and can he learn, and we'll get into all the other stuff. But we evaluate them like everyone else. But yeah, we do want to know why, and we don't penalize them for it, but we want to see what they've been doing. And so, I've been to a few pro days where maybe the guys weren't in the best of shape, and that's not going to help their cause, And
then different topic, you signed Kyle Fuller and then also Kareem Jackson. What did you like about Kyle's tape from watching him in the division, and how surprised were you that Kareem came back? Yeah,
Kyle's just so instinctive. He's a savvy vet, really good ball skills, great anticipation, fits what Vic's doing here, obviously. He had his best year with Vic. And so just to get a guy like that as late as we did was just a big bonus. Now we don't have to force it, in the draft. We don't have to reach. We don't have to take a corner. We got Darby, we have Fuller, we got some young guys. And so that was really big for us. And then, I'm sorry, the second player?
Were you surprised the Kareem Jackson thing worked out so quickly for him to come back?
I'm not. We were really happy. I don't know if I was surprised. The whole building wanted Kareem back. He's a big part of what we're doing. I've enjoyed my talks with Kareem. You watch him on tape, he brings energy, he brings the juice. He's everything you want, he's a leader. And so we're really fortunate he came back.
Benjamin Albright, KOA. When you were with the Vikings, you kind of, I don't know if it's philosophical or not, but you guys had a barbell approach to the draft where you had a lot of 6th and 7th round picks, 47 of them between 2011 and 2020, a lot of early round picks, and kind of eschewed the middle rounds. Is that a philosophy that you have, or is that just coincidence?
No, it was a philosophy. We wanted, I don't want to tell their philosophy, but we just wanted to acquire as many picks as we could. If a player was there, we were going to take him. But if there were 3 players we still liked, we were going to try to trade back, accumulate capital. I guess the philosophy is more darts, the better chance of you hitting the bullseye. And you know how it is. If you have 7 picks and you hit on half, that's not great. You got 3 players. So, we always like to get to 10 plus, and just more darts.
Hey, George, there's a little bit of a movement from the Players Union to J.C. Tretter's advocating, given that the season last year played out well and not having really an in-person off-season, that he would like to get rid of OTAs and everything altogether. I'm just wondering, in your experience, what is the value for a young roster to have the off-season program? What kind of leaps can they make in this time as opposed to just showing up, at camp and going from there?
Yeah, I would say it affects the rookies more than anyone. If there's not an off-season program, if they can't come in the building, just learning the system, being around the guys, the camaraderie, everything that goes with it. This is a man's game, and they came from college, and just I think last year that hurt a lot of the rookies. I think a lot of rookies played great. I was with one who played really good, but you know, we had 15 draft picks, and it was hard for those guys to get up to speed with the vets, just learning. Not that they weren't good, not that they're not going to be good, but I think it's hard for a young player to come in this league with no offseason, the inability to learn the offense on schedule, because everyone in the building already knows the offense. So you're behind the 8 ball, and where do you catch up? In training camp? That's hard. So, no, I get it, but I do think it hurts the young guys.
That was Broncos general manager George Paton speaking about the upcoming NFL draft. Round 1 just 1 week away. The Broncos pick at number 9. The general manager saying that he likes that spot at number 9. There's flexibility to potentially move up. There's also flexibility to potentially move back. Our Troy Rank asking Paton if the team had made calls on moving up in the draft. He says that we have not, but the Broncos have received calls on potentially moving back in the draft. As for the quarterback situation, that was asked about a lot of the Broncos general manager today. Asked about Drew Lock. He did say before he answered that question, I don't know about week 1. The fact that the team is still very high on Drew Lock. They still want to look at the quarterback position and bring in competition. It appears that things are wrapping up there at Dove Valley. We weren't sure if we were going to hear from the general manager as well as the head coach, but our Troy Rank is there, and he will have a full recap on everything that Paton said up on the denverchannel.com, the latest on our streaming apps as well, and of course we will have the latest on Denver 7 News coming up today at 5 and 6 o'clock. Even at 4 o'clock, too. Why not? So, again, Troy Rank's recap will be up shortly on the denverchannel.com. We'll have the very latest on our streaming apps as well as on Denver 7 News at 5 and 6 o'clock. It looks like we're all wrapped up there from Dove Valley, so we will now send you back to local programming here on Local 3.